often what you see in something like Socinianism, there are a number of impulses there that really facilitate Protestantism in general. What you have with Socinianism is these impulses going in an extreme and unchecked direction. So, for example, one of the things that fosters Protestantism in the 16th century are rising literacy rates. Printing press is making print more accessible, print's becoming more culturally and socially important. More and more people are starting to learn to read and write. And one of the things that we know from more recent studies on literacy is that when people learn to read and write, they tend to become more self-conscious, more independent, more politically radical. There was work done in the 1960s in South America that show you teach people to read and write, they become much more aware of their own power, much more aware of their own ability to think. So one way of looking at Socinianism is to say, well, what you have here is a radical movement arising out of rising literacy rates.
Hmm.
It's also, I think, capitalizing on another facet of that, and that is, I hesitate to use the word democratic in the 16th century because that carries a lot of modern connotations that don't apply in the 16th century. But certainly an increasing awareness that the church hierarchy was not to be trusted. And the Protestant emphasis, captured by, I think actually it was Erasmus who originally said it, but somehow it gets attributed to Tyndale, this idea that even the plowman should be able to read and understand the Bible. That idea translates itself into the Protestant notion of the priesthood of all believers. But it also flows over into total chaos. That can be a way of justifying anybody picking up the Bible and coming up with their own views of the Bible. And with the best will in the world, I think if you'd handed me the Bible as a new Christian when I was 17 and told me to read it and come up with the doctrine of God, I
Right.
probably wouldn't have come up with the Nicene doctrine of the Trinity. Because I'd be an idiot
Yeah.
and I don't understand all of the problems and issues. So I think the sort of the emphasis on placing the Bible in the hands of every man, that's a good thing in many ways, but you still need, so Jim will understand this living in Texas, I guess. You don't just put a shotgun into the hands of a 5-year-old kid.
Well, maybe in
You
Texas.
give people weapons and you teach them how to use them responsibly. And
They
I
do here in
think
Texas.
That's what I was going to
I'm sure
say.
they do in Western Pennsylvania as well. That's why I stay indoors. Uh,
Right.
but the Bible has to be. You have to teach people how to handle the Bible correctly. Sola Scriptura is not a sufficient principle in itself to mean that people will come up with the right interpretation. You can also add to that again, the reformers have an appropriately critical approach to tradition, that they want to make Scripture the norming norm of the Church's declarations. One could say that the Socinians, in some sense, take that to its logical outcome. They want to get rid of all tradition entirely and kind of rebuild Christianity from ground zero. And again, as a Presbyterian, I want to say, God gave us the church for 2 millennia, so the church would do great stuff. And so I don't have to invent the faith myself on a Sunday. But the Socinians took the view, no, that the church has clearly been corrupted in the Middle Ages. How far does that corruption go back? Well, in the hands of a guy like Michael Servetus, he'd say it goes all the way back to the early church fathers who picked up on Greek philosophy, brought Greek philosophy to bear in their understanding of Scripture and perverted the simple gospel message. So again, that's another element that's in the background of Socinianism. So there's those sort of, in various ways, I suppose, democratizing tendencies in different areas of the 16th century that mean a kind of untrammeled radicalism was always a significant possibility.